Physical therapy practices excel at patient care. The clinical work is highly skilled and effective. Yet, after the patient leaves, the treatment room, a completely different reality takes over. Every single visit has to survive a highly complex administrative gauntlet. Diagnoses require specific codes. Treatments require modifiers. Everything must be supported by bulletproof documentation, and any oversight leads to denied claims, forced resubmissions, and delayed payments. These hurdles affect the entire industry, from solo startups to massive multi-clinic operations across the country. Revenue is quietly slipping out the door. Looking at the latest data from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, we see an improper payment rate of 15.8% for physical therapy private practices billing Medicare Part B. That translates to a projected deficit of $659.2 million. That staggering sum is not driven by malicious fraud or complex, unresolvable disputes with payers. The vast majority of these missing funds stem from preventable errors made inside the clinic. Down at the individual practice level, analysts note that the average physical therapy clinic operates with a coding error rate of 10 to 15%. For most clinics, survival doesn't depend on getting more patients through the door. It relies on plugging a systemic administrative leak that drains legitimate revenue before it ever hits the bank account. This breakdown chart of the $659 million deficit shows where the system breaks. An overwhelming 88.6% of improper payments stem from insufficient documentation. Additionally, AAPC found 15% of claims are flagged for modifier misuse, and CMS shows nearly 20% fail from timing errors. These errors might seem trivial on a single claim. A minor coding oversight might result in undercoding a visit by a mere $10. If a practice undercodes by $10 across a standard schedule of 20 patients a day, the clinic loses $200 daily. Over the course of a year, that single minor error subtracts $52,000 from the bottom line. Scaling that math up, a typical practice generating $500,000 annually with a standard error rate will lose between $50,000 and $75,000 in delayed or denied revenue. The worst part is that these losses happen silently. Most practice owners remain completely unaware of the drain until they face a sudden, massive wave of payer denials or a formal audit. Writing off a baseline percentage of denied claims as the cost of doing business is a direct hit to the clinic's profit margin. It erases the financial reward of treating those patients. General medical billers often struggle in a physical therapy setting. Unlike standard medical visits, physical therapy relies heavily on a high volume of time-based CPT codes that require precise tracking. This graphic illustrates the 8-minute rule, which governs how Medicare and private insurers calculate billable units. Here, 20 minutes of therapeutic exercise and 15 minutes of neuromuscular re-education combine into a single 35-minute block. Mathematically, that dictates exactly 2 billable units. If a generic billing specialist calculates that time conversion incorrectly, the payer's system rejects the claim immediately. On top of time calculations, billers have to apply modifiers correctly. Modifiers like GP denote the physical therapy plan of care, while modifier 59 is used to justify distinct procedural services that would otherwise be bundled together. Payers are aggressively scrutinizing the overuse of modifier 59. Medicare has even introduced specific X modifiers to force extreme specificity regarding when and why multiple procedures were performed. While the rules get stricter, the payouts shrink. In 2025, the Medicare conversion factor for physical therapy services dropped to $32.35, marking the 5th consecutive year of rate cuts. With Medicare reimbursement rates falling year after year, absolute masteries over time-based coding and modifier rules is no longer a compliance luxury. It is the only reliable defense for a clinic's revenue. Managing this complex coding environment requires skilled personnel, which explains why a recent MGMA poll found that 58% of medical practices cite staffing as their primary challenge. Hiring an in-house billing specialist requires a serious investment. Once you factor in salary, benefits, and payroll taxes, the fully loaded cost lands between $55,000 and $75,000 per year. When that biller eventually leaves, they take their institutional knowledge with them. The claims queue immediately backs up while the clinic scrambles to hire and train a replacement. Replacing a single frontline staff member costs a practice between $25,000 and $30,000 in recruitment expenses and lost productivity. That massive training burden exists because every major payer operates by different rules. United Healthcare, Cigna, and Aetna each enforce unique visit caps, co-payment structures, and prior authorization requirements. Every January, the cycle starts again. Billing teams have to completely update their workflows to accommodate the new Medicare threshold limits and annual changes to plan of care certifications. Attempting to navigate a highly specialized, constantly shifting reimbursement landscape, relying on a single, expensive in-house employee, exposes the practice to immense financial risk. The root of most compliance failures lies in translation. Therapists write notes detailing clinical care, but billers have to extract rigid financial logic from those paragraphs. If a therapist fails to include specific language outlining medical necessity, the biller is forced to guess the appropriate codes. That guesswork leaves the resulting claim highly vulnerable to rejection. The Office of the Inspector General found that 61% of Medicare claims for physical therapy services contained regulatory errors. High-performing practices combat this disconnect by standardizing their documentation. They implement SOAP notes and functional improvement tracking templates designed specifically so billing teams can code accurately without making assumptions. These practices also run regular internal audits, reviewing 50 to 75 claims every quarter. This catches dangerous patterns, like a therapist consistently miscounting time units, long before external payers get involved. Modern clinics also utilize AI tools that automatically flag missing documentation and route claims to specific specialists based on a payer's historical denial patterns. Preventing revenue loss means aligning clinical documentation with billing execution. When therapists provide exactly what billers need, non-compliant claims never leave the building. Many smart practices are solving this problem by completely eliminating their in-house billing department. Instead, they rely on a dedicated revenue cycle management team focused exclusively on physical therapy. These outsourced teams hold AAPC and AHIMA credentials, and crucially, they operate natively inside the clinic's existing electronic medical record system, whether that's Epic, Athena, or eClinicalWorks. Because they work directly within the EMR, the integration is incredibly fast. Practices are fully operational, trained, and processing claims within a 14-day window. This network schematic highlights the strict compliance framework required to make this model secure. The baseline includes SOC2 Type 2 certification, ISO 27001 standards, encrypted VPNs, and a signed business associate agreement before any patient data is touched. With a secure, dedicated team in place, practice owners stop personally chasing down claims.